In Australia, they're routinely handing out $5,500 fines for violating COVID lockdowns. So the severity of these lockdowns, the repercussions for these lockdowns, the use of law enforcement, drones, the military to enforce these lockdowns is absolutely appalling from an American perspective. That for Americans, their primary value is freedom, because America emerged out of the first British Empire before the Enlightenment. It emerged as an armed revolution against the British Empire, and Americans resolved to be free. So Americans place far more emphasis on their freedom than do Australians, New Zealanders, South Africans, English, Europeans. Like, freedom is the number one American value. Now, by contrast, in Australia and New Zealand, and to a lesser extent in England, the number one value is fairness. So from an American freedom-loving perspective, these COVID lockdowns in Australia are an anathema. From the average Australian's perspective, these lockdowns are a reasonable response to an unusual situation that preserves lives, and therefore it is fair. So Australians have 20 different ways of saying fair. They have all sorts of expressions that Americans don't use. Fair go is a very common Australian expression. I don't recall Yanks talking about a fair go. Fair dinkum, common Australian expression that someone, is a decent bloke. You say he's fair dinkum. I don't recall that being used in America. So there are all sorts of expressions for fairness in Australia and New Zealand that are just never used in America, and it reflects the Australian and New Zealand obsession with fairness, because Australia and New Zealand emerged out of the second British Empire, the post-Enlightenment British Empire. There was not an armed revolution. And so by and large, Australians and New Zealanders have a government that works for them. They may complain about it, but in the United States, the government is frequently seen and experienced as the enemy. You get off the plane, you go through bureaucracy, customs in the United States, you are treated as the enemy. As an American, you are treated by your government as the enemy when you disembark from an airplane and go through customs. You go to Australia and you're an Australian and you go through customs, you're treated as a friend. You're treated as a mate. You are treated by people who look like you and sound like you, and you are welcomed. So Australians have a government that, for all its flaws, basically works for them. They may complain, but Australians, by and large, support these stringent COVID lockdowns.